So today I want to talk about dominant seventh chords, 5 chords and secondary dominance, because there seems to be a lot of confusion about it. And one of the things that I did to prepare that lesson is I took a look in some of my jazz theory books. There are 2 that I use. This is one which is unfortunately in German, but it's very good. I really highly recommend that book. And the other one, so I remember that I had teachers when I was studying in Amsterdam who were making fun of that book, and I didn't quite get it at the time. Today when I looked at the book, Mark Ivan is talking about a modulation in a place where it just that is not true. So he's talking about just friends, bar 3 and 4, and there's a 2-5-1, and I know there are lots of lead sheets where there is a 2-5-1 and there is a 2-5-1, but it's actually a 4 minor chord and not a modulation. And this video is not about 4 minor chords, but this video is about jazz standard tunes being in one key. So there are really a lot of jazz standard tunes that are in one key, like There Will Never Be Another You, Just Friends, Out of Nowhere, There's No Greater Love. The list is endless, and I will make an extra list with tunes that are all in one key. A misconception that I very often see with my students is that they think that every 2-5-1 there is in a standard tune is automatically a modulation, and that's just not true. First of all, just quickly talk about what a dominant 7th chord really is. A dominant 7th chord is a structure. The structure is 1-3-5 flat 7, and there's a tritone between the 7 and the 3rd, or the 3rd and the 7, depending on which root you use. So if you have a G7 chord, the F is the flat 7, the major 3rd is the B. And funny enough, if you would use another root which is a tritone higher, which would be the D flat, and keep this tritone up here, then you would again have a major 3rd and a flat 7. So the flat 7 and the major 3rd would change places, but it's still a dominant 7, and that's why the G7 and the D flat 7 is so closely related. Think about a dominant 7th chord as a structure. It's part of a family of 4-part chords like minor 7, major 7, and dominant 7s. So if you would be thinking about cars again, you would just like have different sorts of cars. You would have a BMW, a Opel, and a Porsche. So there would be 3 different sorts of cars, but they're all cars. And this is the same thing. You have different sorts of chords, major 7, minor 7, dominant 7, and half diminished. So those 4 types of chords, I would think they're the most important to get started with. So, and if we think about the G7 in relationship to a key, in relationship to the key of C major, and we think about the C major scale, then we just can count C, D, E, F, G, right? 5th degree, the chord is on the 5th degree of the scale, and it will resolve to the 1 chord. If a dominant 7th chord is on the 5th degree, because it doesn't always have to be on the 5th degree, then you can say it's a 5 chord. So not every dominant 7th chord is a 5 chord, but every 5 chord is a dominant 7th chord. So, and if we have a look at the G7 with a tritone in the structure of the chord, it has a very strong urge to resolve, and that's because it has 2 guide tones in the chord itself. If you're thinking about the C major scale, which are the guide tones, right? It's the F wanting to go to the E and the B natural wanting to go to the C, and we have both those notes in the G7, the F wanting to go to the E and the B wanting to go to the C. And if we just let them do that, just let's play only the tritone, let them resolve. And then if we put a C below, you know, that's actually what you might want to hear. Maybe you check that out for yourself on your fretbook, because I really think this kind of resolution is very, very important. And I hear a lot of students not playing the 5 chord in a way in their line that you could really hear the tension and the release, which is so important. So that's pretty clear. We are in the key of C major. We have the G7 chord. It's on the 5th degree. It wants to resolve to the 1. It's a 5 chord. Right. So I said in the beginning of the lesson that all those standard tunes that I just named, that they're all in one key. So do me a favor, print out those standard tunes if you have a real book, or look them up in Google. You can, if you're looking for pictures in Google, you can find all the lead sheets or a lot of lead sheets. Print them out, think about the key, write down all the chords that are in that key. So you would first of all write down the chords that are sort of natural in that key. So if it would be in C major, you would make a list like C major, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G7, A minor 7, B half diminished. You would write down all those chords because those chords all belong to the family of C major. And then the next step, now we're going to talk about the secondary dominants, is you're going to transform each and every chord that you just played with the same root into a dominant 7th chord. So the C major 7 chord would be a C7 chord. And then you would just write down all those chords, and then you would think about them like they would be, that's what I used to say to my students, that like you would meet every of those chords very alone on the street, not in the context of the tonality we just have been talking about, not in the context of C major, but we would be thinking, this dominant 7th chord, if I would meet it somewhere, where would it want to resolve to? So back to the first chord that we transformed from a C major to a C7, right? We'll play it again like with a shell voicing because it makes it so clear how it wants to resolve. We again have the guide tones in that chord, and again they want to resolve, the flat 7 wants to resolve to the 3, and the 3rd wants to resolve to the root. So if you sort of want to let the natural role of the dominant 7th chord evolve, that's what the chord would do, right? C7 would resolve to F major. Now at the tricky part, we're going to think back into the C major scale. F major, on which degree? Is it on the C major scale? Right, it's on the 4th degree. So what we can think about is that C7 chord is actually a secondary dominant since it resolves to a root that is part of the C major scale. A secondary dominant is a dominant 7th chord that resolves to a root that is part of the C major scale. If it doesn't resolve to a root, it's not a secondary dominant. And so you would write down C7 wants to resolve to F. F is on the 4th degree of the C major scale, so it's 5 going to 4. Next chord would be D7. D7 would resolve to G7, so it would be 2 resolving to 5. E7 would resolve to A minor. So it's the first secondary dominant. So it's the first secondary dominant that we meet that is actually resolving to a minor chord, which makes a huge difference. If you're thinking about the scales you're using on your secondary dominants, you always want to think, is that secondary dominant resolving to a major or to a minor chord? So the E7 is resolving to the A minor 7 chord, so it's 5 to 6. Then the F7 actually resolving to B flat, right? So it's not part of the secondary dominance group, but you can think about it as a blues, four blues chord. But just let's skip ahead. And then the next chord, G7, is our 5 chord of the key we are in. We're still in C. Then the A minor is going to be an A7 resolving to the D minor 7, 5 going to 2. And then last but not least, the beat half diminished is going to resolve to E minor 7. So another secondary dominant that is resolving to a minor chord. And now take a look at your lead sheet. First of all, have a look for the 5 chord of the key that you're in. So let's say you're analyzing There's No Greater Love, which is usually played in B flat. The 5 chord of that tune would be F. So maybe you take a marker and mark the 5 chord wherever it appears on your sheet. And then you just go ahead and have a look at all the other dominant 7th chords that you have on your sheet. And if there is a dominant 7th chord that is not part of all the secondary dominants that you've written down, please don't forget to think about a possible tritone substitution. Because it could also be the tritone substitution of a dominant 7th chord. This is functional harmony, right? So if you know how to think about a song without thinking about complicated modulations, but always thinking about all the chords appearing in the key, belonging to the key, it will make transposing so much more easy. And it will also reflect on your playing, because it really matters how you think about chords and what you know. So thank you very much for watching. That's it for today. If you want to support me and my channel, please subscribe or write a comment below. I would be really happy to have a comment. See you, bye!